Hi, North Park. I'm here with Maria Allewelt, one of our missionaries, and I want you to hear some of the amazing things that God is doing in her ministry as she's made some changes as a result of COVID. Maria, in the past, you've gone to Kenya for several months at a time, done some work in the country. Obviously, with international travel being shut down from COVID, things have changed for your ministry. Tell us about those changes.
Well, not being able to go in person really made a big difference, so I had to plan different. But let me backtrack a little bit. When I first came back home from Kenya early in the spring, I realized how difficult the situation has become here in our country. And so I thought, this must be even more so in Kenya, because in the underdeveloped world, you don't have all this social networking or this organization who would help. So I realized quickly that many of my friends lost their jobs and their income. And particularly when you are a woman and you have children, single mother, where does your money come from? How can you live? So the idea came up that I wanted to raise money and start a COVID fund so that the women can be supported. And that's the first step that we did. So that is a huge change. I've never done that. So ministry from far is very different. But it is also really surprising. Another thing that during that time when I came back, I thought is, I want to live through COVID in a way that I can look back and say, I have lived well through it. Where can I ask God to open my eyes to see new opportunities to minister? And I think that made me also realize I want to live this time with an awareness of that this is a push from God to open my eyes for new ways to minister.
Wow.
And so the idea came up that what else can I do besides, or what else can we do besides going and just helping my friends there. And the generosity of my friends and our church really allowed me to think outside the box.
Wow, okay.
So we started to consider how can we work with the church there in order to reach into the community. And that's what we did. And so our ministry looks completely different, but it's very exciting.
Yeah, so I love your perspective, and I think for us too, we can take away this idea of not just holding out for the virus, but thinking about what does God want me to do in this unique situation. Now, how has God shown up in your ministry as a result of taking these, I would say, very bold moves to change?
That's the incredible part where I think I'm blown away by it. So the church organized teams to prepare food bags to distribute that to the neighborhood. And most of the neighborhoods, there are pockets of Muslims and there are non-Muslims, so there are all different type of people groups. And so they just went into the community and distributed the food bags. People were completely surprised. Nobody would care enough for them. And so to be very practical and bring the love of God with material goods was a new experience for them. And people were so open that almost every week people come to Christ through that. Just this week, 6 people received Christ.
6 just this week?
Yes, alone. So there are new people coming to church. They show up at prayer meetings from the neighborhood, and so it's just amazing what God is doing in that way. The other very surprising aspect of that, which we could not even ever plan, is that the church in itself, we're really starting the pastor talks about revival in his church, because what we could not even foresee is that as people go out into the neighborhood, they share the gospel, they pray with the people if they're wanting to, and they themselves are getting really encouraged by that. One woman wrote me a letter or a message and saying, I was so afraid to reach out to the Muslim neighborhood, but now that I have done it a couple of times, there is such a great joy to share the gospel. And so there is something in our connection with how we share the gospel that brings the joy back to us.
Wow.
And so we see that over and over again. So I don't know how many people really came to Christ through all of that, but I would think more than 30.
Wow. And that's just since COVID started and you started fun.
Yeah, only since COVID started. This push out into the neighborhood, this push out to witness and invite people to Christ is an incredible opportunity for the church and for us to work with a church like that. Actually, I think that's the way to go for the future, also for our mission.
So what would you say to us in light of what you're learning from watching the church in Kenya engage their neighbors? What would you say to us today?
Well, often as church, we're not really working right now in community. It's hard because we are not able to meet. But I think it doesn't need to be on a big scale. I think it can be that you maybe call somebody or write a message and say, how are you doing? It can be as simple as a smile. It can be asking God to give an open heart and an awareness of where can I minister to somebody. I can meet with somebody maybe, in a setting where there's social distancing, and just be really interested in the person and listen and hear. I think that makes a huge difference. I think our new Hope Connection would be a very practical and normal, good way of entering into somebody else's cultural life, So I think that's a challenge that we should have as a church, as every Christian that should be there.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Maria. It's exciting to hear what God's doing, and I think it's encouraging to us to see that God's still on the move. He's still doing amazing things. We might hear a lot of fear, a lot of concern on the news, but God's still at work, and I hope you are encouraged, as I am when I hear what Maria has been watching happen in Kenya.
Yeah, God is not sidelined by COVID. His kingdom goes forward.